The wind howled across the desolate white landscape of Planet V029, its icy fingers clawing at anything that dared to exist in its domain. Caleb Rains regained consciousness slowly, each breath sending sharp pain through his chest as the frigid air filled his lungs. His vision blurred, then focused on the fractured faceplate of his helmet. The life support system of his suit beeped weakly, a concerning reminder that he was running on emergency power. "Systems check," he croaked, his voice barely audible over the shrieking wind. The suit's diagnostics flashed across his cracked visor. Oxygen at 43%, heating systems at 28%, communications offline. Not good. Caleb forced himself to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his left side. Probably a broken rib, he thought. Around him lay the scattered remains of his ship, twisted metal fragments jutting from the snow like the bones of some massive, prehistoric creature. The main hull had broken into 3 large pieces, scattered across at least half a kilometer of terrain. Smoke still rose from the near section. "Just perfect," he muttered, taking inventory of what remained. His medkit was intact, though missing a few supplies. He had a week's worth of ration packs, if he stretched them, and his pulse pistol was still holstered at his hip, though the charge indicator showed it at less than half capacity. The immediate goal was clear: find shelter and activate the emergency beacon. If the crash hadn't already alerted anyone to his position, the beacon might bring rescue. Assuming, of course, that anyone was looking for him in this remote quadrant. Caleb stood unsteadily, scanning the horizon. The landscape was a monotonous expanse of white, broken only by jagged rock formations and the occasional ice spire. The planet's dim sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the snow. A gust of wind nearly knocked him over, and he staggered to regain his balance. That's when he noticed it, a dark streak against the pristine white. Blood, red blood, staining the snow in a trail that led away from the crash site. Caleb frowned. It couldn't be his. He wasn't bleeding externally. Someone, or something, had been injured in the crash and had wandered off, or been dragged off. An uncomfortable feeling crept up his spine. He wasn't alone. Common sense told him to head for the largest piece of wreckage, to search for the emergency equipment. But something else, curiosity, perhaps, or the healer's instinct that had led him to become a field medic, pulled him toward that blood trail. "Hello," he called out, immediately regretting it as his voice echoed across the emptiness. If there was something dangerous out there, he just announced his presence. Still, he found himself following the crimson path, his hand resting on the pulse pistol. The blood led toward a series of ice caves at the base of a nearby ridge. As he approached, the wind died down, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the sound of his own breathing. The cave entrance was narrow but tall, like a gash in the side of the mountain. The blood trail led directly inside. Caleb activated his suit's shoulder lamp, casting a weak beam of light into the darkness. "Anyone in there?" he called, softer this time. His voice echoed back to him, unanswered. Taking a deep breath, he entered the cave, following the blood trail deeper into the darkness. The temperature dropped even further, but at least he was out of the wind. The trail grew thicker, more frequent drops speckling the icy floor. A low growl stopped him in his tracks. In the beam of his light, he saw a huddled figure pressed against the far wall of the cave. At first glance, it appeared to be an animal, something like a wolf, with thick white fur and a bushy tail. But as the creature shifted, Caleb realized it was humanoid in form, with arms and legs like his own, though covered in short, dense fur. It was female, he could tell that much. Her face was a blend of human and lupin features, a shortened muzzle with sharp teeth, high cheekbones, and pointed ears that lay flat against her head in obvious pain or fear. Most striking were her eyes, vivid blue, almost luminescent in the darkness, and unmistakably intelligent. She was wounded. A deep gash ran across her side, matting her white fur with blood. She had tried to bind it with strips of some metallic fabric, but the makeshift bandage was soaked through. "I'm not going to hurt you," Caleb said slowly, holstering his weapon and raising his hands to show they were empty. I'm a medic. I can help. The creature, woman, snarled, baring sharp teeth. Despite her obvious weakness, she looked ready to lunge at him if he approached. You're bleeding out, Caleb continued, keeping his voice even. Without treatment, you'll die. Let me help you. He took a cautious step forward. The wolf woman growled again, but it was weaker this time. Her luminous eyes darted between his face and the medkit at his belt. Another step. She didn't attack. Caleb slowly knelt down, still at a safe distance, and opened his medkit. He took out an antiseptic spray, a blood-clotting agent, and bandages. I'm going to treat your wound, he explained, though he doubted she understood him. This will sting, but it will help. To his surprise, she nodded slightly, her eyes never leaving his. Caleb approached carefully, alert for any sudden movements. Up close, he could see how severe her injury was. The gash was deep, possibly from a piece of shrapnel from a ship. She must have been near the crash site when it happened. As he applied the antiseptic, she hissed in pain, but remained still. The blood-clotting agent worked quickly, stemming the flow. Caleb worked efficiently, cleaning the wound before applying skin and wrapping it with a pressure bandage. There, he said, securing the bandage. That should... He didn't finish the sentence. The wolf woman suddenly surged forward, pinning him to the ground with surprising strength for someone so injured. Her face was inches from his, her teeth bared in what might have been a snarl or a grimace. Then, to his shock, she spoke. You touch me, she said, her voice rough and accented, but clearly understandable. Now, we bonded. Bonded, Caleb repeated, frozen beneath her. What do you mean, bonded? Mate, she growled, her eyes locked with his. You heal. You touch. You claim. Caleb's eyes widened. No, I was just treating your wound. I'm not claiming anything. The wolf woman tilted her head, confusion evident in her expression. She slowly released him, sitting back with a wince as the movement pulled at her injury. I'm Caleb, he said, sitting up and pointing to himself. What's your name? She hesitated, then touched her chest. Juno. Juno, he repeated. Look, I don't know what bonded means to your species, but humans help each other without it meaning. Whatever you think it means. Juno's ears twitched. She repeated the word humans, as if testing it on her tongue. Outside, the wind had picked up again, howling at the mouth of the cave. Night was falling, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. Caleb's suit beeped another warning. The heating system was failing. We should stay here tonight, he said, mostly to himself. Wait out the storm. He gathered some of the drier pieces of debris scattered around the cave and managed to start a small fire using his suit's emergency flare. The flames cast dancing shadows across the ice walls, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. Juno watched him intently, her blue eyes reflecting the firelight. She had moved a short distance away, but her gaze never left him. Caleb settled down near the fire, checking his suit systems one more time before removing his damaged helmet. The air was thin but breathable, cold but not immediately life-threatening inside the cave. So, he said, breaking the silence, you're not from around here either, I could take it? Juno continued to stare, her expression unreadable. Then in halting speech, she said, you save me. You. My mate now. Caleb sighed, running a hand through his short, dark hair. That's not how it works for humans. We don't become mates just because I treated your wound. Juno's ears flattened against her head. Pack law, she insisted. Touch blood, share life, become one. Well, I'm not part of your pack, Caleb replied, trying to keep his tone gentle. We have different customs. Juno didn't respond, but her gaze remained fixed on him. Eventually, she curled up on her side, careful of her wound, and closed her eyes. But Caleb noticed she positioned herself so she could still see him if she opened them. As the fire crackled between them, Caleb couldn't help but wonder what twist of fate had landed him here, stranded on an ice planet with an injured alien werewolf who thought he was her mate. Caleb woke to the sound of movement. Juno was already up, pacing near the cave entrance. Her movements were stilted, careful, but she seemed stronger than the night before. "How's the wound?" he asked, sitting up with a groan. His muscles were stiff from sleeping on the cold ground. Juno turned to him, ears perking up at his voice. "Healing," she replied, her speech still halting but clearer than before. "Your medicine?" "Good. That's good," Caleb said, standing and stretching. "We need to find my ship, or what's left of it. I need to activate the emergency beacon." "Beacon?" Juno tilted her head. "A signal," Caleb explained, miming with his hands. "To call for help. For rescue." Juno's expression darkened. "Others come." "Yes, hopefully. My people. They can help us get off this planet." "My mate goes, I go," Juno stated firmly. Caleb sighed. "Look, I'm not your mate. That's not how humans form relationships. We don't just claim each other because of medical treatment." "How then?" Juno asked, her blue eyes intense with curiosity. "It's complicated," Caleb said, checking his suit systems. The heating was barely functioning now. "We spend time together, get to know each other, choose each other." "I choose you," Juno said simply. "You don't even know me," Caleb countered. "You brave. You heal. You kind voice." Juno looked at him earnestly. "What more to know?" Caleb felt a warmth that had nothing to do with his suit's heating system. "That's flattering, but there's more to it than that." Juno snorted, a surprisingly human gesture of dismissal. "Human ways strange. Too many words." Despite himself, Caleb chuckled. "Maybe you're right about that." They left the cave together, Caleb leading the way back toward the crash site. The storm had passed, leaving the landscape transformed, smoother, with new drifts and formations. The wreckage of his ship was partially buried now. "What happened to you?" Caleb asked as they trudged through the snow. "How did you get injured?" Juno was silent for a long moment. "Pack fight," she finally said. "I leave. Not accept rules. Not accept chosen mate." "You ran away?" Caleb guessed. Juno nodded. "Take ship part. Important part. Pack need it." She patted a pouch at her side that Caleb hadn't noticed before. "Power core. And they're looking for you?" "Your pack." "Yes." Juno's expression was grim. "Find me soon. Smell blood." Caleb quickened his pace. "Then we need to hurry." They reached the largest section of the wreckage, what remained of the ship's cockpit. Most of the controls were destroyed, but the emergency beacon was designed to survive even catastrophic crashes. Caleb found it under a collapsed panel, intact but unpowered. "It needs energy," he explained to Juno, who was watching him work with evident interest. "The ship's batteries are drained." Juno hesitated, then reached into her pouch and pulled out a small, glowing cylinder. "This help?" Caleb stared at the device. It pulsed with a soft blue light, similar to the color of Juno's eyes. "What is it?" "Power core," Juno replied. "From Pack's ship. Why left?" "You stole it." Juno's ears flattened. "Not steal. Take what mine. I find, I claim." Caleb examined the cylinder. It was unlike any power source he was familiar with, but it was clearly powerful. "This might work," he said, "but if I use it, I can't give it back to your pack. They'll be even angrier." "No give back," Juno growled. "Mine now. Ours." The possessive term sent an unexpected shiver down Caleb's spine. He pushed the feeling aside and focused on adapting the power core to the beacon. It was challenging work, requiring all his technical skills, but after an hour of tinkering, he managed to connect the alien power source to the human device. The beacon hummed to life, its indicator lights blinking green. "It's working," Caleb said, relief flooding through him. "It's sending a distress signal. Now we just need to stay alive until someone receives it." A distant howl cut through the air, sending a chill through Caleb that had nothing to do with the planet's temperature. Juno's head snapped up, her ears alert. "Pack comes," she whispered, fear and determination mingling in her voice. "We must hide." They barely had time to gather the essential supplies from the wreckage before the howling grew louder, coming from multiple directions. Juno led Caleb away from the crash site, moving with surprising speed despite her injury. "There," she pointed to a narrow crevice in a nearby ice formation. "Hide there." They squeezed into the tight space just as a massive shadow passed overhead. Caleb looked up to see a ship, sleek, organic-looking, unlike any vessel he'd encountered before. It hovered over the crash site, then moved on, scanning the area. Pack ship, Juno whispered. Hunting. They remained hidden for hours, watching as wolf-like figures prowl the wreckage site, examining tracks, sometimes dropping to all fours to sniff the ground. They were similar to Juno in appearance, but larger, with varying coat colors and more pronounced muzzles. As dusk fell, the searchers withdrew to their ship, but Juno insisted they remain hidden until full darkness. The ice reflects their ship lights, she explained, her speech becoming more fluid with each passing hour. They see us if we move now. Caleb nodded, huddling closer to Juno for warmth. His suit's heating system had failed completely, and the temperature was dropping rapidly. Cold, Juno observed, noticing his shivering. Without hesitation, she pressed against him, her fur-covered body radiating heat. Body warmth. Packway. Too cold to argue about boundaries. Caleb gratefully accepted her warmth. Thank you, he murmured. Juno made a soft sound in her throat, almost like a purr. Mate protect mate. I'm not, Caleb began, then stopped himself. What was the point in arguing? They needed each other right now. Just Juno, not mate. Juno. She tilted her head, then nodded slowly. Juno protect. Caleb. When full darkness descended, they left their hiding place. Juno suggested they move away from the crash site, toward a range of mountains she knew contained a network of caves. Safer there, she said. Pack not like tight spaces. They hunt open. They traveled through the night, Caleb struggling to keep pace with Juno despite her injury. His human physiology wasn't adapted to the cold, and even with Juno's occasional assistance, he felt his strength failing. Dawn found them at the foot of the mountains, looking up at the imposing peaks shrouded in mist. Almost safe, Juno encouraged, supporting Caleb as he stumbled. A roar echoed across the landscape, a sound that belonged to neither wolf nor human. Juno froze, her ears twitching. What was that? Caleb whispered. Ice hunter, Juno replied, her voice low. Big predator. Lives in mountains. As if on cue, a massive creature emerged from behind a nearby outcropping. It resembled a polar bear, but was at least twice the size, with 6 limbs and multiple eyes arranged around a wedge-shaped head. It roared again, revealing rows of serrated teeth. Run, Juno shouted, pushing Caleb ahead of her. They sprinted toward the nearest cave entrance, but the ice hunter was surprisingly fast for its size. It gained on them quickly, its thunderous footfalls shaking the ground. Caleb reached the cave first, turning to help Juno. To his horror, he saw her stumble, her wound reopening under the strain. The ice hunter was upon her in seconds. Without thinking, Caleb drew his pulse pistol and fired. The energy bolt struck the creature's flank, drawing its attention away from Juno. It roared in pain and fury, turning its multiple eyes toward him. Juno, run! Caleb shouted, firing again. The second shot hit one of the creature's eyes, and it reared back, howling. Juno scrambled to her feet and ran toward him. Caleb fired a third time, emptying his weapon's charge. The ice hunter retreated, wounded but still dangerous. Inside, Juno gasped, pulling Caleb into the cave. They moved deep into the darkness, listening to the creature's frustrated roars fade into the distance. You're wound, Caleb said, noticing the fresh blood staining Juno's fur. Let me see. They found a small chamber deep within the cave system, protected from the elements and any pursuing predators. Caleb used the last of his medical supplies to treat Juno's reopened injury. Why risk? Juno asked as he worked. Why shoot Hunter? Could. Caleb focused on applying a fresh bandage. I couldn't just leave you out there. Pack would, Juno said quietly. Weak fall. Strong survive. Well, I'm not Pack, Caleb replied. And neither are you anymore, right? Juno watched him, her blue eyes soft in the dim light of his emergency lamp. No, not Pack. She hesitated, then added, better. When he finished treating her wound, Juno didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned closer, her muzzle near his face. For a moment, Caleb thought she might bite him, but instead, she gently pressed her forehead against his, an intimate gesture that felt oddly natural. "Thank you," she whispered. "Juno, protect Caleb too." They remained in the cave for 2 days, resting and recovering. Juno taught Caleb how to set simple traps for the small, rodent-like creatures that inhabited the caves, providing them with fresh meat. In return, Caleb shared stories of Earth and human customs, which Juno found alternately fascinating and baffling. "Humans mate for life?" she asked during one of their conversations. "Some do," Caleb replied, tending their small fire. "It's called marriage, but it's a choice, not an obligation. Pack chooses mates," Juno said. "Alpha decides who breeds with who. Strongest lines continue. And you didn't want that." Juno's ears flattened. "Pack chose wrong mate for me. Brutal male. Strong body, weak mind." She tapped her temple with a clawed finger. "I want choice." "So you left?" Caleb nodded. "Took their power core and ran." "My power core," Juno corrected. "I find an ice cave. Bring to Pack. Alpha claim it. Say I too weak to use it right." Her eyes flashed with old anger. "Not weak, just not brutal. Different strength." On the 3rd day, they ventured out of the caves, needing to check if the beacon was still functioning. As they approached the crash site, Caleb felt a growing unease. The area was too quiet. "Something wrong," Juno murmured, her nostrils flaring. "Pack smell." They crested a small rise and froze. Below them, 4 wolf-like figures surrounded the beacon, which had been removed from the wreckage and placed in the center of a small clearing. "A trap," Caleb whispered. "Alpha," Juno growled, pointing to the largest figure, a male with silver-gray fur and an imposing presence. "The others are his chosen ones." As if sensing their presence, the Alpha looked up directly at their position. "Juno," he called, his voice deep and carrying. "We know you are. There. Come down with the human." Juno tensed beside Caleb. "Run?" she asked quietly. Caleb considered their options. The beacon was their only hope of rescue, and these wolves, Juno's former pack, stood between them and that hope. "No," he decided. "We talk. Maybe negotiate." They descended the slope slowly, Caleb with his empty pulse pistol holstered but visible, Juno walking tall despite her injury. The Alpha watched their approach with cold yellow eyes. His companions, 3 other wolf people of varying sizes and colors, moved to flank him, their postures aggressive. "The thief returns," the Alpha said when they were close enough. His English was more fluid than Juno's had been initially, though still accented. "With her stolen property and a new pet." "Not pet," Juno responded defiantly. "Not thief either. Power core mine to claim." "Nothing is yours," the Alpha snarled. "All belongs to Pack. You belong to Pack." He gestured to one of the others, a muscular male with russet fur. "Your mate awaits. Return what you stole, accept your place, and perhaps the Pack will forgive." Caleb stepped forward, ignoring Juno's warning hand on his arm. "She doesn't belong to anyone. She's free to choose her own path." The Alpha's eyes narrowed. "Human speaks of things it does not understand. Pack is everything. Individual is nothing." "Individual is everything," Caleb countered. "Pack is just individuals who choose to be together." The Alpha bared his teeth. Pretty words. Empty meaning. He turned his attention back to Juno. "Last chance. Return a Pack. Submit to chosen mate. Or die here with a human." Juno moved to stand beside Caleb, her shoulder brushing his. "I choose freedom," she said clearly. "I choose Caleb." The Alpha's growl was like distant thunder. "Then you choose death." He signaled, and the russet-furred male lunged forward, aiming for Juno's throat. She met him head-on, her smaller size compensated by speed and precision. They collided in a blur of fur and teeth. The other 2 pack members moved toward Caleb, who drew his pulse pistol despite knowing it was drained. He backed away, looking for any advantage in the uneven terrain. One of the attackers, a female with dark gray fur, feinted to the left while the other circled right. Caleb recognized the tactic. They were hurting him, trying to separate him from Juno. A scream of pain cut through the air. Caleb risked a glance and saw Juno pinned beneath the russet male, blood staining her white fur. Something snapped inside him. Without conscious thought, Caleb charged toward the nearest attacker, swinging his pistol like a club. The wolf person, surprised by the direct assault, hesitated just long enough for Caleb to land a solid blow to its head. The creature stumbled back, dazed. Caleb didn't wait for it to recover. He sprinted toward Juno, adrenaline lending him speed he didn't know he possessed. The russet male had Juno by the throat, his jaws tightening. With a roar of his own, Caleb leaped onto the attacker's back, wrapping his arm around its neck in a chokehold. The wolf man released Juno, twisting violently to dislodge Caleb. They tumbled in the snow, Caleb holding on desperately. He was outmatched in strength, but human anatomy had its advantages. His arm position restricted blood flow to the creature's brain, and eventually it slumped unconscious. Caleb scrambled to his feet, expecting the next attack. To his surprise, the alpha held up a hand, stopping the other pack members. Interesting, the alpha mused, studying Caleb with new respect. Human fights for Juno, not as weak as it appears. Juno struggled to her feet, blood trickling from her neck, but her eyes fierce. Told you, different strength. The alpha paced slowly, considering. Power core, where is it? Connected to beacon, Caleb answered, pointing to the device. Sending signal for rescue. We need it. We need it more, the alpha countered. Our ship failing. That power core only thing keeping us alive. Caleb glanced at Juno, who looked away, her ears lowered. She hadn't mentioned that detail. Why should I help you? Caleb asked. You just tried to kill us. Pack law, the alpha replied simply. Fight for place. You win, you earn respect. He nodded to the unconscious form of the russet male. He fail. You succeed. Then respect our choice, Caleb said, moving to stand beside Juno again. The core stays with the beacon until rescue comes. Then you can have it back. The alpha's eyes narrowed. And Juno chooses her own path, Caleb replied firmly. As do I. For a long moment, the alpha stood motionless, his yellow eyes unreadable. Then, surprisingly, he inclined his head. So be it. We wait for your rescue. Then core returns to pack. He turned to Juno. You're no longer pack. No longer protected. Remember that when cold nights come. With that, he signaled to his companions. They retreated, dragging their unconscious comrade with them. Will they honor the agreement? Caleb asked, watching them disappear over a ridge. Alpha always honors word, Juno replied, touching her wounded neck. Not honorable to give word first place, but once given, never broken. Caleb examined her injury. Not too deep. You were lucky. Juno gave him a look that could almost be described as scathing. Not luck. You. She touched his face with a gentle claw. You fought for me. Of course I did, Caleb said, surprised by her surprise. You'd have done the same for me. Yes, Juno agreed. But you not pack. Not even same species. She tilted her head. What? Caleb opened his mouth to give a practical answer. They needed each other to survive. They were allies of convenience. But what came out was something else entirely. Because I care about you, he said simply. Juno's eyes widened, then softened. Care, she repeated, as if memorizing the word. Humans say this instead of mate? Caleb chuckled. Something like that. It means, you're important to me. I don't want you to get hurt. Important, Juno echoed. Her muzzle curved in what Caleb had come to recognize as her version of a smile. Caleb important to Juno too. They returned to the cave, Caleb carrying the beacon with them. The power core was still functioning, sending its signal into space, their only hope for rescue. That night, as they huddled together for warmth, Juno asked about Earth. Planet full of humans, she mused. No pack people, no werewolves, if that's what you mean, Caleb replied. Just humans and regular wolves and other animals. Would Juno be welcome? She asked, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Caleb considered the question. It would be complicated. People might be afraid at first. You're very different. Dangerous different? Just different, Caleb said. But different isn't always bad. People would learn to accept you, I think. He smiled. I did. Juno's ears perked up. Then Juno go with Caleb. To Earth. If that's what you want, Caleb said. But it's a big universe. We could go anywhere. Anywhere with Caleb, Juno agreed, resting her head against his shoulder. The beacon emitted a sharp beep, startling them both. Caleb examined it and felt a surge of hope. It's receiving a response, he said, hardly daring to believe it. Someone heard us. Juno's ears twitched. Good, she asked, sensing his excitement. Very good, Caleb confirmed. It means rescue is coming, maybe within days. Then we leave this planet, Juno said. Together. Caleb smiled. Together. They spent the next 2 days preparing for rescue, gathering what supplies they could and keeping the beacon functioning. Juno's wound healed quickly. Her species apparently had remarkable regenerative abilities. Caleb's own injuries improved as well, though more slowly. On the 3rd day, they spotted a ship entering the atmosphere, a sleek, official-looking vessel with human markings. They found us, Caleb breathed, watching the ship descend toward their position. Juno tensed beside him. Pack will come for Core soon. Let them, Caleb said. We kept our end of the bargain. As the rescue ship landed, the Alpha and his pack appeared on a nearby ridge, watching silently. The ship's ramp extended, and 3 humans in Standard Space Authority uniforms emerged, weapons ready but not aimed. Caleb Rains, one called out, a woman with captain's insignia. That's me, Caleb replied, stepping forward with Juno at his side. The captain's eyes widened at the sight of Juno, and her hand moved closer to her weapon. You're in the company of a non-human entity. This is Juno, Caleb said firmly. She saved my life. She's coming with me. The captain hesitated, then nodded cautiously. We'll need to follow protocol for first contact, but if she's non-hostile, she's a friend, Caleb interrupted. More than a friend. Juno's ears perked up at this, her blue eyes shining. Very well, the captain conceded. But I need to ask about that device you're carrying. Our sensors indicate it's putting out unusual energy readings. It's a power core, Caleb explained. It belongs to them. He gestured toward the ridge where the pack watched. Part of our agreement. They let us use it to signal for rescue, and we return it before we leave. The captain looked uneasy but nodded. We'll honor your agreement, but I'm sending armed escorts. The transfer was tense but peaceful. The Alpha approached with 2 pack members, maintaining a formal distance from the humans. Core, he said simply, extending a clawed hand. Caleb disconnected the power core from the beacon and handed it over. Thank you for keeping your word. The Alpha's yellow eyes moved to Juno. Last chance. Pack or exile. Juno stood tall, her tail swishing behind her. Exile with choice better than pack without. The Alpha grunted, neither approving nor disapproving. May your hunt be successful, Juno no pack. He turned to Caleb. Human has strength after all. Different kind. With that, he and his companions retreated, disappearing into the white landscape. As they boarded the rescue ship, Juno paused at the top of the ramp, looking back at the frozen world that had been her home. Regrets? Caleb asked, standing beside her. Juno shook her head. No pack. No home. Just cold. She turned to face him, her blue eyes reflecting the ship's lights. Now have Caleb. Now have choice. Yes, Caleb agreed, taking her hand in his. Now we have choices. Together. As the ramp closed and the ship prepared for departure, Juno leaned close to Caleb's ear. Caleb, she whispered, using his name with new softness. Not alone anymore. Caleb smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. No, not alone anymore. Juno's muzzle curved in her wolf smile. Caleb chose Juno. Caleb met her gaze, no longer seeing an alien, a werewolf, or even a different species. He saw someone who had fought beside him, protected him, chosen him despite everything her world had taught her. Yes, he said, with a certainty that surprised even himself. I choose you, Juno. She made a sound that was half purr, half growl, and pressed her forehead against his, that intimate gesture he had come to recognize as deeply meaningful to her kind. The rescue ship lifted off, leaving the frozen wasteland behind. Through the viewport, they watched the landscape shrink beneath them, the white expanse giving way to the blackness of space. Where we go now? Juno asked, her voice hushed with wonder as she stared at the stars. They'll take us to the nearest space station first, Caleb explained. There'll be questions, medical examinations, debriefings. Juno's ears flattened slightly. They examined Juno? Like specimen. No, Caleb said firmly, taking her hand. I won't let that happen. You're not a specimen. You're a person, and you'll be treated as one. The captain approached them, her initial wariness somewhat tempered. Dr. Rains, when you're ready, we'd like to hear your full report. And, she glanced at Juno, we'll need to establish some protocols for your companion. Her name is Juno, Caleb reminded her, and she understands everything you're saying. The captain nodded, slightly embarrassed. Of course. Juno, welcome aboard. This is the first documented encounter with your species, so there will be considerable interest when we return. Interest good or bad? Juno asked directly. The captain seemed surprised by the question. That depends on how we handle it. But Dr. Rains is right. You'll be treated with respect. When the captain left, Juno turned to Caleb. Doctor, you heal people. Caleb nodded. I'm a field medic. I was on a scientific expedition when my ship malfunctioned. Good healer, Juno said, touching her side where the wound had almost completely healed. Saved Juno. And you saved me, Caleb reminded her. More than once. They were given a small cabin to share, the crew apparently assuming they would prefer to remain together. Neither corrected this assumption. As days passed aboard the rescue vessel, Juno's command of English improved rapidly. She was intelligent and observant, quickly picking up nuances of human behavior and language. The crew's initial fear gave way to cautious curiosity, and then to genuine interest as they realized Juno was not just sentient, but highly intelligent. Caleb found himself acting as a cultural interpreter for both sides. He explained human customs to Juno and helped the crew understand her reactions and needs. Your people have no pack at all? Juno asked one evening as they sat in their cabin, watching the stars stream past the viewport. We have families, Caleb explained. Parents, children, siblings. And we form communities, friendships. It's not so different from a pack, I suppose, but with more freedom to choose. And mates? Juno asked, her blue eyes intense. How humans choose mates. Caleb felt his face warm slightly. We call them partners, or spouses if they're married. It's complicated. People meet, they spend time together, they develop feelings for each other. If those feelings are strong enough and mutual, they might decide to build a life together. Feelings, Juno repeated. Like care? Like choose. Yes, Caleb said. Love, commitment, trust. Wanting to be with someone because they make your life better, and you want to make theirs better too. Juno was quiet for a moment, processing this. Different from Pack. Same feeling, different rules. She looked at him directly. Juno feels. For Caleb. Human feeling. Not just Pack instinct. Caleb's heart beat faster. I feel for you too, Juno. I didn't expect it, but it happened. Good unexpected, Juno said with her wolf smile. 2 weeks into their journey, the ship docked at Callisto Station, a major hub in the outer solar system. From there, they would transfer to a transport headed for Earth. The station director, a stern-faced woman named Admiral Haskin, met them personally. Her gaze lingered on Juno with undisguised fascination. Dr. Rains, we've prepared quarters for you and your companion, she said. We've also arranged for a xenobiology team to conduct a preliminary assessment. Juno is not a test subject, Caleb said firmly. Any examinations will be with her full consent, and I'll be present. The Admiral looked like she wanted to argue, but nodded curtly. Of course, protocol requires a medical screening for all new arrivals, but nothing invasive without consent. Juno stepped forward. Juno agreed to basic exam. Want to know more about humans, too. Their quarters on the station were larger than the ship's cabin, with separate sleeping areas that they could choose to use or not. The first few days were filled with debriefings, medical screenings, and careful introductions to station personnel. To Caleb's relief, most of the station's crew treated Juno with respect, though their curiosity was sometimes overwhelming. Juno handled it with remarkable patience, answering questions and observing human interactions with keen interest. Your species is remarkably adaptive, observed Dr. Eliana Santos, the station's chief medical officer, after Juno's initial examinations. Her physiology shows signs of genetic engineering, designed for survival in extreme environments. I was created to survive, Juno confirmed. Pack ancestors made by humans long ago. 4 cold worlds. For hunting. For war. Caleb frowned. Made by humans? Are you saying your species was engineered by humans? Juno nodded. Old story. Humans make wolf people for war on ice worlds. Then forget about us. We survive. Become pack. Make own ways. Dr. Santos looked stunned. That would have been centuries ago. Early colonization era. There are legends about failed genetic experiments, abandoned when the ethical backlash hit, but I never thought. Not failed, Juno said proudly. Survived. Adapted. Pack strong. The revelation created a stir among the station's scientists and administrators. Suddenly, Juno wasn't just an alien curiosity. She was living evidence of humanity's past actions, a descendant of forgotten creations that had evolved into their own culture. This changes everything, Admiral Haskins said during an emergency meeting. If Juno's people were originally created by humans, we have an ethical responsibility toward them. They have their own society now, Caleb argued. They're not property or projects. They're an independent species. Of course, the Admiral agreed. But this connection means we need to establish diplomatic relations, not just scientific study. For Juno, the news brought mixed feelings. Pack always say we special, she told Caleb later. Made for purpose. Now no true. But purpose was war. Violence. What your ancestors were made for doesn't define you, Caleb said gently. You chose a different path. You chose freedom. Juno leaned against him, seeking comfort. Will humans try to control Pack again? Now, they know we exist. I won't let that happen, Caleb promised. Your people have the right to live as they choose. As their departure for Earth approached, Caleb noticed Juno growing quieter, more thoughtful. On their last night on the station, she finally voiced her concerns. Earth has many humans, she said, staring out at the stars. Many rules, many eyes watching Juno. We'll be like specimen in cage. Caleb took her hand, feeling the soft fur and the strength beneath it. It doesn't have to be Earth. There are human colonies where life is simpler, places where differences are more accepted. Juno's ears perked up. Caleb would leave Earth? For Juno, I would, he said simply. My home is where I can do good work, help people. That could be anywhere. What about Pack? Juno asked. Juno's old Pack. Other Packs on Iceworld. If humans know about them. We'll make sure they're protected, Caleb promised. Your knowledge can help establish fair contact protocols. Your people won't be exploited or controlled. Juno considered this, then nodded slowly. Juno help. Juno speak for Pack, even if not Pack anymore. The transport for Earth departed the next day, but Caleb and Juno weren't on it. Instead, they requested assignment to a research outpost on Europa, where a small community of scientists studied the moon's subsurface ocean. Admiral Haskin was surprisingly supportive of the decision. Europa outpost could use a good field medic, she said. And having Juno there as our first cultural liaison with her species makes strategic sense. Before they left, Juno received a message, a simple data packet containing coordinates and a short audio file. When she played it, Caleb recognized the Alpha's voice. Juno no Pack, the message said. Pack watches human stars. Pack prepares. When time right, Pack will speak to humans. Until then, you speak for us. Choose well. A responsibility, Caleb observed. A choice, Juno corrected, her blue eyes bright with determination. My choice. Our choice. As their transport approached Europa, its icy surface gleaming in the distant sunlight, Caleb stood beside Juno at the viewport. He no longer saw the alien features that had once seemed so strange. The pointed ears, the fur, the wolf-like muzzle. He saw only Juno, his companion, his partner, his mate in the truest sense of the word. Not alone, Juno whispered, echoing the words she had spoken when they first left the ice planet. Never alone again, Caleb agreed, knowing it was a promise he intended to keep. On Europa, they would build a new life together. Not human, not pack, but something unique. They would face challenges, misunderstandings, prejudices. But they would face them together, two beings who had found each other across the stars, guided by choice rather than fate or instinct. And as the transport began its descent toward their new home, Juno slipped her hand into Caleb's and squeezed gently. No words were needed. They had already said everything that mattered. They had chosen each other, and that was enough.